Welcome, everyone, to Real Estate Therapy. And we're here to talk about uh, everyone's favorite topic in San Francisco when it comes to real estate, which is tenants and landlords. Not to put, which is a very complex sort of topic, and we'll get into that a little bit. But I think it's long. If you think about the American dream of homeownership, a lot of times the stereotypical image is of, a white picket fence and a single family home with green grass and an apple tree maybe growing in the backyard and a couple of kids running around. And, um, and what's implied in that is that the people living there own their home, and home ownership being the epitome of the American dream. Um, and but that's a very things have changed a lot since the 1950s, and in cities where it can be a high bar for entry to home ownership, you will see that there's a lot more tenants usually than homeowners. In San Francisco, that's definitely the case. And I don't know what the stats are, but maybe we'll talk about that, or we'll put that in the show notes. I have with us today Shelley Sutherland and Lisa Zahner, who are two of my very trusted peers, people I really enjoy. And we're here to talk about how uh, homeownership can become a reality for tenants in a place like San Francisco. Um, before we before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about this because it can be a very controversial topic, and people have a lot of opinions, and a lot of those opinions are misinformed um, because of a lack of education. And I thought I'd like you to introduce yourselves, but tell me about the project, the current thing that y'all are doing. And I know that you've had a recent success story, and I think maybe that's a good way to kick off our conversation today.
Great. You want to go?
You go first. We're so nice.
We're both like,
women,
no, you go
women
first.
together.
No,
You
go
first.
first. We're such great partners in this. So thanks, Cynthia. So this is I'm Lisa Zahner, and I've been working in real estate for 18 years as an investor and also as a real estate agent. I own investment property. I have tenants. I love being a landlord because I really like my tenants, but I also really like helping people to buy their homes, which is a way of building equity and generational wealth. So it's something that I feel very strongly about, that if you are a tenant but you have an opportunity and the ability to buy your home, it is great for you long term, because you could stay a tenant and make your landlord rich, or you could become a homeowner and build your own wealth through the equity in your home. And so Shelly and I recently did a project that just did that, and Shelly can tell you a bit about that.
Yeah. I've been a realtor for a really long time in San Francisco. Gosh, over 25 years now. I was doing commercial as well. But I've always been interested, I sell mostly condos and single family. I'm also a landlord. We are the faces of landlords. So, I think it's, all different types of people can be landlords. And it's really helped us in our business with passive income and such. But I have great tenants as well. But anyway, I've always been interested in the co-housing model.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, it would be something I'd like to pursue when I can shift, when I don't have to rely so much on condos and single family anymore. So recently, I've been kind of getting my business ready to go more in that direction.
Mhm.
And then Lisa and I met each other recently in a transaction for well, here's the story. We'll go into this, and it's so cool.
It's so cool, and it's such a San Francisco story, right? Where San Francisco is a small city, right? And everybody knows everybody else. It's like not even 6 degrees of separation,
Mhm.
right? And so this is the story that literally takes place on a street corner in San Francisco.
I
Right.
love it.
Pretty much because my dog walker, who I've had for two dogs now, and so this is 20 years worth of dog walking. He lives in Coal Valley, and he's always talked to me about buying property in Coal Valley. And I thought, oh boy, my dog walker wants to. I mean, I want to keep him here because I rely on him. He calls me up recently and says his building's going on the market. Can I help him buy it? And I'm like, wow, okay. I didn't have a lot of confidence in it. And
And to not to interrupt you, but that would be because a lot of times a dog walker isn't, they're not making the salary of a Google executive, and you're
Well,
wondering how can they
I, you know,
buy. Right.
I was misinformed also about the numbers. So this education process between landlords, tenants, realtors. We are here to change the paradigm because I thought this is going to be unaffordable for
Right.
my dog walker.
Right.
and one of the reasons why is because it was a 5 unit building. And so, in terms of financing for a home, right, you can get a residential loan for a single family home, a condo, or a 2 to 4 unit building, right? And so that all falls under residential. So your down payment requirements are less than if they are a building with 5 or more units, because then it turns into a commercial loan. And
Right.
typically, pre pandemic, people would say, well, 20% down for residential, 30% down for commercial was kind of what you had to do. But now, because financing has changed, lending has changed. Sometimes we're seeing that buyers need to have 50 or 60% of the purchase price as their down payment for a commercial building.
Right.
So for a building that is $2 million, 50% of that is $1 million cash that a
Right.
buyer would have to have. And most people who are regular people, not institutional investors, don't have $1 million cash laying around for their down payment, right?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
and this,
Even the, just a person buying, let's say, $1 million house, which would be a very low price, relatively
Right.
low price in San Francisco, they have to have at least $200,000 sitting around, and
Right. And
it,
we know that there are all sorts of loan programs where it's not 20% or 50%, but as a general rule of thumb, right?
right,
Just kind of as a general, like, I don't want to dissuade anyone from thinking like I'm never going to be able to buy a house, because that's not true. But as a general rule of thumb, you have to have a down payment. And as a general rule of thumb, those are the amounts that you need to have.
right, and
yeah,
because
and this
it's
type
always
of
a
property,
creative, and this is a creative solution to a long-term
and
problem.
it benefits landlords because they're able to get their price, and it benefits tenants. But just to touch on this type of inventory, multi-unit buildings, their valuations have decreased like 20%.
15 to 20%.
So
Uh,
this is a great time to buy these kinds of properties.
yeah.
So anyway, back to the story because I think this is interesting and this is our
Yes.
our model. My dog walker calls me up, wants to buy this building, and I said, "Well, start reaching out to your fellow tenants to see if they want to buy, and then reach out to your clients, your other dog walking clients in Coal Valley, and see if they want to jump into this and participate." So that brought in Dean, our third partner. And then Dean has always worked with Lisa over the years. You've known each
I've
other.
known Dean since we lived in New York, since 20 years ago, right? So 18 years ago, I was pregnant with my second kid when we met.
Yeah.
And so, well, I mean, so anyway, so Dean, though, so I've known Dean for a long time, also as an investor. He's a client of mine. And then I got a call from my friend Terry, who is
Oh,
Dean's neighbor, who she and I have been friends for 10,000 years. And she is also a client of
and I know her
of the
as
same
well
dog walker.
because we
Everybody
all
lives
go
in
to
the
the dog
neighborhood.
walk,
They all go to the same dog
but we
walker.
always go to his parties as well.
Right. So
So,
this is literally happening on the corner, because there's the building that we help the tenants to buy. And then on the corner of that same street is Dean's house. And then literally 2 doors down is Terry's house. So everybody
so
knows each
we
other.
felt it was an opportunity to work together. I always love collaborating with other agents, and this sort of project uh, is quite complex, and so you really do need two realtors to kind of manage this. But in a nutshell, we got the three long-term tenants who have been in their properties 10 to 20, 10 to
10,
15 years.
yeah,
10 to 20 years.
10
I
to
think
20
Eric
years.
has been there for
Yeah,
20
10
years.
to 20 years.
Three long-term tenants. They bought their units, and then our dog walker friend, he bought a second unit, and then Dean bought the fifth.
Right.
So that's how we
And
made this deal work.
the way that we did it, separate from being a commercial purchase, right? Because there was no way anyone was going to come up with $1 million for a down payment. And
Mhm.
we said, here's what we're going to do is we're going to use a vehicle that takes a 5 unit building, and instead of selling it as one whole building, 5 units together, we're going to sell each unit as its own entity. And this is called a tenancy in common. And so this is a really important thing that in San Francisco you do a lot of it. This is how people can buy their unit in a building, is you kind of divvy it up. And, of course, there are attorneys involved, there are surveyors involved, there's the state of California Department of Real Estate involved to approve all of this. But in a nutshell, we took a 5 unit building, divvied it into 1/5 each. Everybody got 1/5. Everybody got their own loan for their 1/5 purchase price by putting down 20%. So they got
Right.
a residential loan for their unit.
And then the price per unit was really low. The seller landlord got their price, and the tenants got a really good deal.
Got
The
a great deal. Yeah.
equity on this is tremendous. I think they bought it at how much is for?
Well, so the whole building sold for $2,026,000.
Yep.
Divide that by 5.
Yeah.
Now we have to do math. So
And that's such a tough
400,000.
thing for realtors.
400,000, right? So
Yeah.
so just say, okay, if all things being equal, right, roughly $400,000 per unit, and when they appraised, each unit appraised at over 600,000. So literally, if the owners wanted to go and repaint and put their place on the market and resell, they could literally see $200,000 in profit, which is equity, right?
Just to clarify, you're saying when the tenants who are now
Who are now
owners,
owners, if they were to sell,
right,
right,
yeah,
they would see this as a profit, which is incredible because most tenants don't have this opportunity because they are just paying their landlord, paying their landlord, paying their landlord, and their landlord is making a profit and
Right.
building equity, but the tenant is not. And so what this does is it turns the tenants into homeowners and helps to start to build long-term generational wealth building, which is
Right.
just so exciting.
And as an investor, I mean, or as a seller, and this is me thinking out loud, the seller of the building would have had somebody looking at buying that whole 5 unit building, looking at the numbers on the rents. When you have long-term tenants, you have relatively low rents, and they would have said, this isn't that valuable to me as an investment. But as an owner occupied building, it becomes a lot more valuable.
yeah. I
Absolutely.
mean, at that purchase price of 2 million, the GRM and cap rate, whoever's interested can call us and we'll explain that.
Can I call you?
The gross rent multiplier and the cap rate, the
Right.
capitalization rate, which is basically measurements that you use in commercial real estate.
They weren't very good.
Right.
If they were to put this on the open market. So that's where the landlord, the seller, got a pretty good price on this property because the tenants were willing to pay a good price for their unit, which was, I mean, it's a win. It's a win-win for everybody on
Yeah,
this.
it really was. It really was because the seller got the price that she wanted without any hassle, which is amazing because oftentimes when someone is selling a tenant occupied building, there's just a lot of tension between the seller and the tenants, because prospective buyers, investors are tromping through people's apartments, through your living space, right? There's fear and uncertainty of, well, what's going to happen to my home.
Right.
Feeling insecure about your home is a terrible, terrible situation.
Hmm.
And no one feels good about that. And so what this does is it completely turns that on its head, turns the relationship on its head. And suddenly you say, okay, from the seller's perspective, they're happy because they've gotten the price that they want for the building, without hassle and stress. And for the tenants, all of a sudden they become owners, which is just a completely different situation. Um, for their reality, and where their money is going, and for your mindset and peace of mind. It's
Right.
really incredible.
As well as for the community at large, because I mean, like it or not, st- all the studies and data show that when people own the home that they live in, they become they tend to become more involved in what's going on in their local community. They care more about um, what's the infrastructure that's supporting them.
I
They
walk up and down that street, walking my dog, walk past that building. I've been walking past that building for years. Right after we closed, for the first time ever, I saw the tenants who are now owners and our clients and friends. They were out there sweeping, they're
You know,
planting. I mean, it's like, yes, I mean, they're taking care of the property, the street. They're now more community engaged in what's going on in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful thing to see.
and that's not to say that all tenants are not involved in their community. Like, that's not what we're saying,
no,
right?
no,
But what we're saying is that when you are an owner, there is just a different feeling, a different, yeah, I'm like digging my claws in, and I'm doing it all, and I'm voting in every election, and I'm picking up the trash, and I'm calling 311 when something's not working, right?
right.
It's more of like a, I don't know. It's just more. There's just more investment,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
financially and
paying
emotionally,
attention. Yeah,
right?
It
yeah.
puts you into a more active and engaged posture because you're not at the effect of what's going on.
Yeah. I
Now,
mean, like, yeah, like you care who runs for school board, right?
right,
Because maybe you're going to be raising your kids here. Like,
Yeah.
right.
these are really important things.
So when we were talking at the beginning, and you said, we are landlords. We're the face of landlords. I want to talk about the stereotypical idea of a landlord, which is, it's almost like being a used car salesman, right?
Oh, every time I would tell people I'm a landlord, my friends, I'm a landlord, the immediate response was, "Oh, you're a slumlord." I've heard that so many times,
Yeah.
and we our clients. We have a lot of clients that are investors and buy
Yeah.
multi-unit buildings,
Yeah.
and they it's it, it's a symbiotic relationship.
It has.
Landlords need tenants, tenants need landlords. When one of my tenants calls me up, something is broken, I get on that right away. I know not all landlords are like that, but there's a lot of landlords that are.
I mean, I would say there's a small number of landlords who get a bad rap, like anywhere you go, right?
Yeah,
That we all know, poor players and poor performers. But
right,
I would say that most landlords, and I'm talking about, kind of individual owners, not like big institutional investors, right?
right.
Because there's a difference, right? But most landlords, like here in San Francisco, there's the what's it called,
Small,
Small Property Owners of San Francisco
yeah.
group, right? And these are people, kind of like me and Shelley, who own one or two small buildings,
Hmm.
right? But this provides income for their family. It provides a nest egg, right? And there is a symbiotic and mutually respectful relationship between the landlords and the tenants is what is ideal,
Right.
right? My husband one time, really surprised me when he said, I think that being a landlord, and having tenants is almost like a sacred responsibility,
Mhm.
because feeling housing insecure is so terrible. Like, if you don't know
Mhm.
where you're going to live, how can you think about anything else in your life, right?
Right,
And so it's something that we take very, very seriously, because we care about the relationship we have with our tenants, but we also care about our property, because that is
right.
our long term investment, right? Like, that is something that I will be passing on to my kids.
Yeah.
And so, it's part of how you also diversify, your investments,
Yeah.
when you're looking for what is your retirement plan.
Hmm.
Well, it's
Uh,
another one of those words. Investment is another one of those words that has a lot of different meanings in different situations. And just like how we say, I mean, so it's your investment it's an investment in property that's going to build wealth, ideally, and add to your security. It's also, from a quote tenant standpoint, they're looking at how they are perhaps emotionally invested in their home. This
yep.
is their home. And what can be, I mean, I think the practice of real estate is a noble one if viewed as not transactional and as trying to help people's progress and make their lives better. Um, if you have this emotional investment from the tenant who is seeing this as their home and they want to feel secure and they want to feel held, and then if you have the investor who's invested in it as an investment vehicle, those two things aren't mutually exclusive. They can go together quite
Yes, they.
nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you create a situation where tenants can become owners, now their investment is so much greater, and the quote landlord's investment takes on a more emotional
Yeah, and I
psychic
mean,
tone.
you hear stories all the time of. I have a good friend of mine who, he bought his 2 unit place from his landlord because he was living there, and his landlord said, "Hey, I'm going to sell my building. Do you want to buy it?" Right? And for the landlord, it was like the path of least resistance, right? And
Mhm.
for my friend, it was great because he and his wife were at a place where they're like, "We really want to buy a place," right? It's
Right.
not unusual. I mean, it certainly happens, right, for a property owner, landlord, to sell to their tenants, right? But usually that's kind of like in a smaller building, and it's not so complicated. There's like, oh, we're just going to do a deal, right? But like, once someone says, well, I'm going to put this on the market and I want to sell it as an investment property,
Mhm.
right? Then that's where Shelly and I can really come in, and like where we, I think, help to facilitate this and help people to learn how to do it,
Yes.
because you're not born knowing how to do a real estate transaction,
Hmm.
right? And there's a lot of moving pieces, right? And that's where we come in to help people and to say, look, here's how you do it. Here's how you get your financing. Here's the legal things you have to do. Here's all the things you want to look for. Here are the inspections you want to do. I'm big on sewer lateral inspections, so you
Right.
can talk about,
Ah,
but
No kidding.
right.
That's your $25,000 surprise, or give or take,
Oh yeah,
depending.
I mean, like, oh yeah, like, I remember one time looking out the window and being like, in the middle of a big rainstorm and being like, oh, because it was literal. Because the we had old clay pipes that had finally deteriorated in the
oh
middle of a
God.
rainstorm, and it
Oh
was like,
no.
oh no, and so it's like, but when people wonder, like, well, why would I want to work with a real estate agent, or how could they help me, or why don't I just do this deal with my landlord on my own? It's like, well, because oftentimes you just don't know what you don't know,
Oh,
and
and
that's where we come in to help people to facilitate that.
there's so much you don't know.
Right.
Um, now, as a, I used to do a lot of sales of 2 and 3 unit buildings, 2 unit buildings in particular. And we can't go into this in detail, but one reason for that was that they are the buildings in the city that are most easily converted to condominiums. And your sewer lateral story, Lisa, reminded me of um, and so a lot of times I would introduce people to each other
Hmm.
who were wanting to enter the market but didn't have big budgets.
Right.
And so I introduced my brother to clients of mine because they wanted to get in the market. And this was, so building came up for sale, was they were asking $300,000.
Wow.
And talk about a
Long ago.
slumlord. This building had been so neglected. It was awful. But anyway, my brother and my clients bought it together. They formed a tenancy in common arrangement, 2 TIC units, and they moved in. And by the way, I just want to fast forward that about 6 or 7 years later, they both sold their units for like $500,000. So
Right.
that was like
Fantastic.
a really, I mean, they had to do some work, which is what I'm getting to. Um, they moved in right after Thanksgiving, and right before Christmas, I got a call from my brother that they had gone down in the garage and had noticed um, a bad odor. And turns out that they had just put this light cement coating over what was basically an open sewer
Oh
in the
God.
garage. Had been the landlord's solution, right?
Mhm.
Um, and but now you had two owners who got together. They got the sewer lateral replaced. They got the pipe leading to it
Right.
replaced, and then my brother ended up creating this neighborhood association. I forget the name of it, but it was a big deal. This was in Nopa. Everybody had signs on their windows saying, we're part of this group. We care. We're looking out for each other,
Yeah.
and it was a beautiful community. Whereas before, it was just this sad, neglected, empty building.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, it's so great. When you are strengthening your communities and doing that. I'm just a big believer in
And
that.
they
That's how I
also
started out in real estate.
and they also shared in the expense. So they
Uh
did
huh.
not have to cover that entirely on their own. I mean, I bought a two
Right.
unit building with a friend, and
Mhm.
and I was thinking, oh, I'd love to have this whole thing on my own. But I started looking at all the expense on this, and I needed to share those expenses and also
Yeah.
those unexpected costs. Back to the 5 unit building in Coal Valley, they now are dividing that up by 5 people
Right.
to take care of a new roof that's going to
Hmm.
be happening. So,
Which, by
yeah,
the way, we negotiated the seller credit for. I just want to be clear on
oh,
that.
goodness. I
Yes.
got on that.
Well, I mean, like replacing a roof is expensive, right?
Yeah.
And again, if you don't know what you don't know, and you're buying a new place, and then all of a sudden you're like 25 or 30 grand for a roof. Oh,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
And a leaky roof, water is the bane of
Yeah.
any property owner's existence, right? Because you don't,
Right.
water can be very damaging. So you
Hmm.
want to get
and
that roof.
and emotionally distressing. It's
Uh,
particularly upsetting.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
the,
back to your brother, though. I mean, that's what, this is one of the reasons why I love living in a city, is that you have people around you, you're talking to people all the time. If you want, you could also,
Right.
just keep walking down the street. But there is more opportunity for engagement. And when you live in a building with others, and again, I'm in a 2 unit building with a friend, we have had so much fun
Yes.
over the years. So it's community in your building,
Hmm.
community for your neighbors. Yeah, we have an association here, Mount Olympus gathering. We just did a Christmas party
Right.
last weekend. But I think it's good for uh, an urban environment.
And like there's a group of families at my kids' elementary school that they all went to the same church, and then a 3 unit building came up for sale, and they all
Mhm.
went in as tenants in common to
mm,
buy the 3 unit building. And it's wonderful because especially here, right, you're living in these old buildings. There's not great sound insulation, right? You have a kid, you have a dog, like you can hear what everybody else is doing, right?
right.
But so in this case it was 3 units, right? And the kids from the families literally just ran up and down the back stairs, in and popping in and out of everybody's apartment. Like the community value there cannot be overstated, right?
Yeah.
It's like, the parents
It's
want to go out for dinner. Oh, you have a built-in babysitter because your kids are going
Right.
downstairs, right? I mean, like, and literally, like, this is why, like, my husband and I will not leave our street
Mhm.
because we're friends with
Yeah.
everybody on our
Same
block,
way.
and it's just like, when you are digging in for the long haul, like you're digging in and you're building that community, which just strengthens, I think, and improves just your day to day life. Like everything is better when you feel like a sense of
Yeah,
belonging.
absolutely. There, and I want to reinforce though, this example you just brought up, the 3 unit, my 2 unit, those were marketed, to the general population who was
Right,
ever in there to
right.
purchase. When you buy a 3 to 6 unit building, which is what we're focused on, when the tenants purchase their own units, the dollar per square foot is way less than the
Yes,
example
yes,
that you just provided.
yes, you're right.
So
yes, so much less.
we
Yes.
can get into that number crunching with people, but it is astounding. And I started off telling the story about our transaction, but I needed to see those numbers
Hmm.
myself. I needed to
Hmm.
be educated. And because there is such a spread,
Okay, so we can give an example. And I'm just kind of pulling this out of thin air here, right? So this is not
Mhm.
going to be exact, right? But if you look at a general multifamily building that's for sale in San Francisco right now, take a 5 unit building, right?
Mhm.
And $2 million, the price per square foot is going to be something like 400 four
yeah,
hundred bucks a square foot, right? So I'm just
Right.
kind of throwing this out. So 400 bucks a square foot. If that building were already pre-separated out and sold as tenancy in common, then your price per square foot would be anywhere from
650 to 7.
650 to 7. I've seen it as high as 850, depending on your neighborhood and the finishes, right? Same
And if it
unit.
had been condoed before they put a moratorium on condoing buildings like that, it'd be even higher.
Exactly.
900 to 1100.
Right. And
Yeah.
so it's like, we're talking about so many people being priced out, right? Because look at the math, 400 bucks a square foot versus 950 a square foot for the same unit. Now,
Right.
granted, when a unit goes on the market, it's been painted and kind of snazzied up, right? But there's no reason why, if you're living there in your own home, you can paint, you can snazzy up, you can do whatever you want, but you're not having that huge upfront cost, right? Your financing, everything.
Mhm.
I mean,
And that is the big difference. That is the huge opportunity when tenants who are living in their buildings already can then purchase their building. You can do it at just a much
They're
lower
in they're
cost
in a
overall.
unique position, and we're trying to get the word out
Yeah.
about these opportunities.
right. Now and I'm really excited about it. And I want to note there are programs in the city through the mayor's office of housing
Hmm.
where there are what we call below market units that were created usually when a developer was trying to build a bunch of condos. They would have to have a certain percentage be below market. um, but there's this whole bureaucracy that goes along with that, and there is not nearly enough BMRs to go around for the demand. Um, so you're filling this huge need in addressing this, in my opinion. I mean, so let's say there's an investor who just wants to get out. Okay,
Hmm.
that's one thing. But I can think of other situations where I've seen it be a real boon for somebody. Let's say that you're an elderly person who's been, say, you own a 4 unit building and you've been living in that building
Hmm.
for 40 years. And now you're thinking, gosh, I'd like to move downstairs to the lower unit where there's not so many stairs. But I have tenants in all those units, and it's very difficult to say, hey, could you move upstairs? And I'm going to move down. And you definitely can't evict a tenant so that you can move around. But let's say you want to age in place,
Hmm.
don't want to sell the building, and move out. You want to stay where you are because you're part of that community. Um, but, you've got maintenance coming up. Maybe your cash flow isn't what it used to be. What a great time to talk about bringing your tenants in.
Really
Yes.
good.
No, it's perfect. And it's so funny that you say that, Cynthia, because literally yesterday I was in Russian Hill. I was uh, looking at another client's project, and I literally spoke to a woman who has this beautiful multifamily building. So of course I was scoping it out, and she said, "I will be 90 years old next month, and I have lived here 50 years, and I never want to leave, and I love my tenants, but it's also getting to be a bit much."
Mhm.
Right. And that is exactly the exact situation that you're describing.
Did
Right.
you talk? Did you bring up
Oh,
this
I gave her my
idea?
card for sure. I was like, well, there's things we can do here.
Well,
Right.
there's this whole other thing in a scenario like that where, um, she's probably ostensibly she has a lot of equity in the building.
Right.
She can offer first mortgages to
Totally.
those would-be owners.
Yeah.
She
Right.
can subsidize their quote down payment
I
to
know.
bring
Right.
them in. I mean,
Opens
Yeah.
up a
there's
whole bunch of opportunities, right? It's like, so a property owner could say, oh, well, if the tenant is like, well, I don't even know if I can qualify for a loan, you can say, as the property owner, you can say, oh, well, we can do seller financing.
right
What a
because
great, I mean,
because
I,
I know you've been paying your rent for the
right.
last 10 years. I
I
know
know
you're
you're
good for
right.
it.
Right.
Um, I mean, there's
We
so
have a
many
whole new
great.
group of people we're
There's,
going to be
there's,
reaching out to.
I mean, the thing is like, honestly, it's like, this is why I love our work, like what we do, right? Because I feel like, there's opportunity everywhere, right? And there's opportunity to make a really positive impact, on people, right?
Yeah,
And like, I look at every building and I think, oh, what could we do there? Like, what else could happen here, right? Because it's not just, the brick and mortar of it, right? It's like there's lives, everybody's lives are all involved in there. And you're like, what could we do here that could, really make a difference? And there's so much that we
Mm-hmm.
do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I love our work because
It's very creative.
it's very
It's problem
creative.
solving. It's looking at an asset in a totally different way. Yeah.
But it like significantly touches people in a very personal way,
Mm-hmm.
it
right?
does.
And
It's
so like
home.
it's home, and like I just think that's very gratifying. I'm gonna get all verklempt because I'm just an emotional person. So.
But it's so true. I'm with you. I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years,
Oh my.
and I actually ran into somebody the other day who had been renting, wasn't going to buy. This was a long time ago sale, um, and I had a conversation with them. They ended up scraping together everything they had to make an initial purchase. Now we've done two more transactions over the years. They built a lot of wealth
Mm-hmm.
and equity in their home. And if I hadn't had that conversation, if I hadn't been thinking with that cap on, not the cap of, oh, hey, can I make a sale here, but the
Right.
cap of, wow, maybe there's an idea that could help this person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she said, "Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
wouldn't be where I am if it hadn't been for you."
Cynthia, that's
Um,
so true. Like my I can easily say that my real estate agent who sold me my first home as a TIC, right?
Mhm.
And she matched me up
Mhm.
with another TIC partner. That changed my life, in such a significant way because I was trying as a single woman to, buy a place of my own, right? And she said, listen, let me hook you up with someone else. You guys can buy this duplex, here's how you can do it. Right. And she laid out the groundwork for how we could make that happen. And then, of course, that led to so many other great things. The very first great thing being when I told the guy that I was dating, like we dating for like 8 months, and he had that morning just accepted a job in New York City. We were here in San Francisco, and I was like, you know what? I have this opportunity to buy a house. And he's like, well, I'll buy it with you. He had just accepted a job in New York City like 45 minutes before. And
Hmm.
I said to him, well, I mean, I was madly in love. And I said, well, that's a lot of money between friends. Like, I'm not going to buy anything with you unless we get married. And he says, oh, yeah, we'll get married. So it was seriously, that's my husband. We've been married 23 years, right? But it was
Well,
like, but
that
it
is
was seriously
great.
because my real estate agent was like, look, I'm going to hook you up with this other gal. You guys can buy a TIC together. It's this duplex, right? I
Yeah.
tell the guy I'm dating, he's like, I'll buy it. And I was like, well, only if we get married. We get married, right? We buy the house, we get married, right? The whole thing. But because of that, like owning that, then we condoized, then we took equity out. We bought a rental property, right? We refinanced that rental property, took more equity out, buy another rental property, all because my real estate agent showed me here's how you do it and you build your generational wealth, right?
Right.
And I feel like what we do for our work is just so incredible because we are helping people, to create their own wealth building.
Mhm.
Right. And so I'm so excited for all these folks that we helped with this 5 unit building, right? Because I can't wait to talk to them in 5 years and be like, well, what are you doing now? Like, where are you now? Like, what have you decided to do now? Because in a perfect world, like we can help them to buy an investment property, like their next property, and it just kind of goes on like that, because if you can help people to do that, I just
Yeah,
feel like it's a wonderful, wonderful
absolutely.
outcome.
I
Well,
mean,
that,
in San
yeah.
Francisco, everyone hears it's so unaffordable. We've been hearing this for decades, ever since we've been in this business. And we are in this because of problem solving, the
Right.
creativity, helping people. But there's so many ways to get into this market and build the wealth that you just described.
Right.
And then every purchase, there's some beautiful story
Yes,
to
right.
it. I mean,
Everything has a
yeah.
story. Yeah.
So,
And but Cynthia, getting back to what you said about the below market rate
Hmm.
units, right?
Hmm.
Sure, there are like BMR units that are available, but there are so few
Yes.
below market rate units available compared to the number of people who need and want to buy their own homes. And
Yes.
the qualifying process, so the waiting list is huge. The qualifying process
It's
is very
crazy.
complex. And the thing is that with those BMR units, when you buy them below market rate, you are limited in the amount of equity
mm,
that is actually allowed to grow.
Right.
So
right.
You can't make money on them.
right.
Right.
And so it's like great if you can get into a BMR unit and be like, one of the lucky few who can do that. That's great. But if you cannot, there are other ways to do this. And I
Right.
think that that's the important thing to know that there is another way to get the outcome that you want.
Exactly. And
It
if
could be
we wait,
Better
better
outcome,
outcome because you are building tremendous
equity,
more a
right?
lot the equity is greater.
yeah, and if we wait for our government, you know, to provide solutions to the housing crisis, good luck. That's going to take a long, long time. We all know what we're up against there. And there are certainly people who will never be able to afford housing as an owner. We know that.
Right.
But
And we
there's a
also know some
huge,
don't want to either.
yeah, there's a huge group of the population who would like to, who have good jobs, who have enough income that they should be able to have a home. Um, at which, so I want to talk about that for a minute. The whole idea, there's a lot of fear around this. And I think sometimes, let's say you have this scenario where there's the little old lady who's thinking about maybe selling part of her building as
Hmm.
TICs, or there's the long term tenant who has a rent controlled apartment and they're thinking, well, I could just stay in my rent controlled apartment because I'll not rent controlled, protected, which for you listeners who don't know about San Francisco, you'll hear a lot of things. And one of the things you'll hear is that there's such a thing as a long term protected tenant, where if you've lived in your apartment or house for 10 years, if you've lived there for 10 years and you're over the age of 60, you never have to leave, basically. You can keep paying a relatively low rent and you never have to leave. So a tenant like that may say, why would I want to be an owner? Because I have this sweetheart deal. Well, there are a lot of good reasons to be an owner. And because they have this low rent, they may have actually saved some money for a down payment. But there's a lot of fear around a scenario that sounds almost too good to be true. Almost too good to be true. That I, dog walker, could own my own unit. Do you encounter that in your day to
I
day
don't see
life?
so much fear. I just don't think, we keep on, you said the phrase, and my favorite phrase, you don't know what you don't know. People are
Right,
misinformed. Tenants are misinformed. Landlords are misinformed. And we just need to get the information out there. So I don't think it's fear. I just don't, I think they have just removed themselves from the concept of purchasing
right,
because of this 20% down payment on a big purchase price, but a 20% down payment on these,
On a
like,
smaller purchase price, you
is
know,
doable.
and yeah, I mean, I think most of it comes down to, that there are misperceptions about what is actually possible,
right,
right? And that, there's a tendency to see things in black or white, right? Black and white. This is how it's done, right? I am a tenant. I'm never going to own anything because it's so expensive and because I rent control, whatever, right? Or a landlord saying, like, I'm never going to be able to, you know, get out of this building, or my tenants won't be able to do this, or, and where we operate is, in that place of nuance, right? Like,
right,
it's not black or white. It's like there is an opportunity here if you are open to hearing about the opportunity and to how to make this happen. Like, if you want to become a homeowner and you are a tenant, there could very well be a way forward for you, right? Not for everybody, right? Not everybody, but for a lot of people, there is that opportunity there. If only people knew that that was a possible thing.
right. But you're not going to hear about that. When you talk about it's not in black and white, you're not going to hear about this that much in the media. You're going to hear about the woman who was charged a $250 pet fee for her goldfish, or you're going to hear about the person who was selling their building and they had to pay the tenant $400,000 to leave. That's what you're going to hear. Or you're going to hear how we just can't get along, when in fact, we can get along. And when we can find ways to live together, I mean, we're talking about
Right.
living together as human beings. We need each other. And there's ways that this can be done that can benefit everybody. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I feel like crying. Right
Yeah.
now.
See, it's not just me crying.
Kumbaya,
No,
everybody.
but seriously, it's like it is a beautiful thing. And when we talk about, here's another interesting thing, right? When people think about, I love the people where I live, right? And I want to age in place, right? And this kind of goes back to one of the things that Shelley really feels passionately about, right? We're all talking about, like, oh, okay, when I'm old, who's going to take care of me? Who's going to be my community? How is this going to work? Right.
Mhm.
And we see more and more people who are kind of creating their own age in place communities. Right.
Right.
And that's another opportunity there.
Mhm.
People say, like, we think, well, when I can't make it up the stairs, now what am I going to do?
Right.
Right. But I
Right.
want to be with my friends. And,
Yeah.
and what if your kids are grown and live far away? Or what if you don't have kids? Who's going to take care of you? It's going to be your community.
Can
I
we do
think
that on the next video talking about this
Oh,
other?
next show. Yeah,
Um,
well, I mean, because you and I talked about the scenario where we were going to buy a building with, let's say, three or four other women, a 6 unit building,
Yeah.
for us to age in place. And then there'd be one unit for the hunky young dog walker massage therapist who was going to
Totally.
be in place, right?
Right.
right.
Um,
To take
with
out the
the,
trash can for eye candy. Yeah.
I would never do anything like that. You know, I wouldn't objectify someone
Okay.
like that.
Take out that part about eye candy. Like, my kids would give me so much grief.
It's fine. It's fine. We've been tiptoeing around a little bit today, just that this is so fraught. The whole tenant thing is so fraught. But I do want to say something like, you when you tell somebody in Kansas City that you can own a house in San Francisco, but you can't ask a tenant to leave that house unless you are moving in, right?
Mm.
And people will go, "What? You own a place." Well, the city wisely put rules into place to try and protect people from things like that happening. So there's a lot of legislation, and a lot of people have different ideas about whether or not that's fair or right. But those laws were put in place for a reason, and that's why it's made. That's sort of been the thing that's created this situation where um, you have an opportunity for people to work together for their mutual benefit versus having somebody buy a building, empty it out, throw everybody out, and you
That's
know
hard to do, but yeah.
that's hard to do because people
Because
had the foresight to stop it.
right, yeah, because we have these laws in place,
Yeah,
and and the laws are there, to protect people from losing their homes, and the homes that they live in, not necessarily the homes that they might own,
right.
right? But
Right.
that's one of the reasons why we have rent control.
And
And
we
Um,
did.
it's
And you wanted a percentage. It was 65% of San Francisco's population. They're renters.
right, right.
Not the highest though. We looked at that number before. The highest is 71% in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So
Wow.
we're not even, well, I think we are in the top 10. We're in the
but
top 10.
still,
But
65% I think is pretty high
yeah,
compared
Yeah.
to lots of other places. But
And
the point is
so
that there's a way for everybody to work together, right? It's like some people will always be a tenant because they prefer that, right? And because maybe they're just in a situation where they're like, look, I don't, you know, that's just where they are, right? For one reason or another, right?
I've loved being a tenant when I have been. No responsibility. Dishwasher breaks, I can make a
Right,
phone call.
right,
If I was lucky enough to have a dishwasher in
right.
my
And when you
unit.
are a homeowner, it's on you.
I'm in a, I'm a homeowner now, and I don't have a dishwasher or a
uh,
garbage disposal. And
homeowner, you can put in that dishwasher.
Yeah,
that's right, except that my co-homeowner is a contractor who really doesn't want to do anything like that, like install a heating system.
Oh no.
Yeah,
wow.
okay.
Oh, oh no.
That's that's so that we can cuddle more.
Ah,
I think because then that keeps you close, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We have
My
lots of great sweaters.
my big thing is that I will never install a and like everybody has these like those automatic ice makers in your freezer,
Mhm.
right? Or the water that comes out of your fridge. Like that's pretty standard. People have that, but it's just because one time I had one of those in one of my units
Mhm.
and it broke, and it leaked water into the downstairs unit,
oh
and
no.
we had water damage again, right? The bane of everyone's existence. It was a huge mess, expense, like people lost the use of their kitchen down below, and so
Wow.
anytime people are like, well, I'd really like to have this water thing, I'm like, well, I don't know, you might want to think
Oh
Oh,
about that.
no.
That's my warning about
ah.
that one. Like all the like kitchen fridge companies will be like, don't say that.
Yeah, I mean, I know whenever I don't have one, as you could guess, but I will put my glass there, and then water goes shooting all over the floor, or
Oh,
me,
oh
uh,
no.
or me. I think that the whole water intrusion place is a great stopping point for
We can
today.
talk about that later.
I want to have a whole show devoted to water intrusion and the metaphorical as well as practical
Yeah.
impact of that. And Shelley, I definitely want to talk about the co-housing aging in place idea. So
Would love
we'll
to.
do that. Do you want to say anything about where to find you? I know where to find you, but
Well, we are called the Neighborhood TIC. But where to find us is our emails. Mine is at Kindred.
And
Yours is
mine's a city real estate.
okay.
But this is a good thought that actually we just need to put together our email that says Neighborhood TIC.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do that.
On the to-do list.
And we'll put that on the to-do list. I'll put my teenager onto creating that because they're my tech support.
I love it.
Yeah, so we'll have an email address for Neighborhood TIC.
Okay, and I'll put all that in the. People will be able to find you.
Yes,
so
they will be able to find us.
I can't wait to spread the word myself, far and wide. So,
well, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Cynthia.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you.
It was just a real pleasure. So thank you.